Good evening. Welcome to the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. This is the June 15th, 2023 meeting of the Commission. Our first order of business tonight is to recess into work session. We'll return around 6:30 to reconvene into general session.
Hey, howdy. What's going on? Good. How's everybody doing? Good. Okay.
There's pizza back there.
Yeah, I'll get some here in a second. Item 2 on the work session. Are we good to go?
Yes.
Okay. Item 2 on the work session is review of the cases. We'll start with the roll call this evening. I'm Chairman Edmund Haas. Go down the list here. Vice Chair Glenn Portman.
Present.
Commission members Sue Blankenship.
Present.
Cindy Bishop.
She's virtual.
Oh, very good. Hi, Cindy. Freddie Garrett.
Present.
And Ed Marr. Okay, maybe not yet. Okay.
Not yet.
Okay, I'll turn the meeting over to Miss Mary Cron Boswell to introduce staff and review the cases.
Good evening. We have Matt Steer with us. He'll be presenting some cases for you this evening. We have Cole Baker with engineering, in case you have any questions. Then we have Shelby and Cammie taking care of us tonight. So the first public hearing on your agenda this evening is the Popeyes. So essentially, you've seen this before. So what ended up happening was they came before us. You guys approved it last time.
Ed Maurer has arrived.
Ted Maurer has arrived. Ed Maurer has arrived. And so before they went to P&Z, to City Council, they withdrew. Because what happened was the Starbucks that they were kind of aligned with withdrew. So they had to work out some, I guess they had made, who's gonna do what, and so anyway, that all kind of crumbled. So we're back again before you this evening, so item 5 and item 6 are kind of the same thing. We have a new player though. It'll be Tim Hortons, Cafe and Bakery, so they're from Ontario, Canada, started in the 1960s, and they're making their way over the border. So this will be one of their newest facilities here in Texas. They've opened a couple down in Houston, in the Houston-Katy area. And so they're hoping to move here in Coppell. So the Popeyes, essentially nothing really has changed from what you saw earlier. They've got the double drive-through. They've got all their parking. They're asking for a few variances related to signage, which we saw before. So nothing new. Really.
Nothing over and above.
No.
Okay.
So the next item, I don't know if you have any questions on that one. So then the next item, item 6, like I said, it came in earlier this year as a Starbucks. They went away. Tim Hortons has now taken over that spot. The square footage is almost the same. It's like 1,600 square feet. The biggest change to the overall concept for these two is, I don't know if you recall, there was like the Popeyes, the Tim Hortons, and then there was like a drive through the middle of them both. Mm-hmm. Yep. That's gone away. Okay. This is a much nicer flow to it. Plus it bumped up their landscaping because they were a little bit short last time. So I think this is a better flow and makeup for us. And the Tim Hortons will have a double drive-through. 17 parking spaces. They're asking for the same kind of variance in terms of signage because it's like only 32, 3 odd feet frontage. So they're asking for the same thing to do the length. So they're gonna have a monument sign out front, one sign on the building out front, and that's basically it for them. Landscaping, they're meeting all their landscaping. The materials for both of them are the same, and it's gonna kind of coordinate with a little bit of a quick trip, so matching brick and the Nietzsche house stuff is gonna match for both of these buildings. And they got a little bit of ethos.
A little bit or a lot of it?
Uh, ethos along the top part of the building. Same type of variances for both of them in terms of signage. I think this one has a little bit more parking out along the 121 frontage, so that's technically a variance, but that's not, I don't think that's a big deal killer. And then I'm gonna just hop down to the last item, just because it's mine, and then I'll let Matt talk about his items.
Just a quick question on this. So,
Yeah.
were there any lessons learned? I just forgot the name of the coffee shop that's by McDonald's. I meant just for the queuing.
151.
With the queuing of the cars and traffic, is that,
I haven't heard of any issues for 151. And then with like the Tim Hortons and stuff, they're really pretty, okay, I'm speaking from experience because I
She's Canadian.
yes, exactly.
So, it's from my hometown actually.
Schedule.
Um,
Big
The copies, I think, I would think it's pretty quick. I don't
Okay.
think it's I don't think it would.
Just
You
curious.
can ask them,
Okay.
but at least it has a double drive-through.
Yes.
Like when the Starbucks came in, it was just a single drive-through.
Yeah.
So,
We're more bothered with Popeyes having the double and they having the single.
yeah, yeah. So, you know, with the double drive-through, plus they have the parking, I think
Okay.
it'll be okay.
Thank you.
I'm glad that the site's getting rid of that center drive. I just
Yeah,
didn't like that at the beginning, so that's good.
yeah, so that's like the biggest change, that and the double drive-through for the coffee shop.
Right.
And then the last item on the agenda, so the next few items on your agenda are gonna be changes to the zoning ordinance. I'm just gonna speak to the last one, just because that one was mine, and then I'll do the other ones. So item 9 is the text change amendments. We said to off-street parking, but it's specific to like daycares, facilities. So right now, the way it's written in the ordinance is that you have to have like a circular drive, so that we can drive up. Typically, it's, you know, like you see the Primrose over here.
Yeah.
It's got the porte share. You know, you pull in, drop off your kids, then you pull out and go. So we're giving them actually an option. So it's, you don't have to have that. You can either provide the circular drive, or like we've done with some other ones, just provide 3 parking spaces up front by the door. So we'll give them the option. Because the thing is, if you have kind of like a site where it's its own lot, it probably makes more they can do this, achieve it more easily. But if you're part of like a strip center or something else, having that drive-through is really not, it's not, you know, gonna happen. So, really, that's the only change. It's pretty minor.
Do you think
Is there
3
any-
spaces is enough?
Right, so that's in addition to, you know, all the other spaces they have to provide. This is just right up by the door, so it serves the same purpose of the circular drive.
With queuing and,
Right.
yeah. Is there something that precipitated the daycare?
No, it's just, you know, we've had it asked a few times, so we're like, you know, this is an easy, quick little fix. So you could do either or. So it's not like you're changing it, that you have to do this. It's we're providing some flexibility.
Okay.
Then I'll let Matt talk about items 7 and 8.
Okay, yeah, so like what Mary had said was, we're bringing forward some ordinance changes, and these are the easy ones that we can just get passed through, and then we're doing more research. We're looking into artificial turf and other items that require a lot more research and a lot more in-depth studies. So this is item number 7, which is your accessory structures and carports. Basically, what we're trying to do is clean up the language to make it more readable, more understandable for our residents, and then give a little more flexibility in what can be done in someone's backyard. So
Is that the kitchen kind of thing?
So the first of the amendments was we're going to allow for a pool cabana, and so that would have a 3/4 bath, which is toilet, sink, and shower, and then you're not allowed to have anything else besides that enclosed with it. The second was a workshop to have a half bath, so you can have your workshop with a half bath, nothing else with it. And then all other accessory structures could either have a utility sink or some sort of bathroom, but they can't have both. And the reason being is when they start having both, one can be used as a kitchen countertop with a bathroom, and then eventually someone comes in, buys the house, and says, well, let's make this into a bedroom here, and then they have an accessory dwelling. So we've specifically said that it cannot have a sleeping chambers, and it cannot be occupiable as a residence. And so we've had a lot of people come through over the years asking for the pool cabanas, and like with the last residential zoning we had, we included that as a PD condition. So we've been studying this for years. It's just now it's
Have you
time to
had
bring it
people
forward.
asking to add a bedroom this way?
No,
Okay.
no, I don't think they bring it to our attention if they were wanting to, because we would specifically say no.
And is there a limit on the square footage we're looking at?
Well, there is in terms of setbacks. So we've got regulations that relate to 150 square feet or less, and then 150 square feet or more. And we've got our setback regulations aligned with those. So we did a comparison city research, and we found that we were pretty much the most restrictive out of all the cities. So let's see here. I'll go through the setback changes with you out in the public forum. But the most significant of the setback changes relates to the rear yard setback when adjacent to a street. So you have the houses that back onto Sandy Lake, that they do have accessory structures, and they're technically required to be set back the same as the minimum front yard setback for that district. But I've driven down the street, and I don't think that any are set back 25 to 30 feet from Sandy Lake. So those would bring those into conformity. The other thing is I don't think it impacts the view corridor along Sandy Lake. You have fences, you have your accessory structure setback. Even if it's set back 10 feet, you can hardly see it over the fence. So
Yeah, most of them are brick fence.
right, yep. Yeah, you got brick walls along there.
Go on Sandy Lake.
Well, along Sandy Lake, and then you also have the wooden fences on the north side of Sandy
I'm
Lake.
usually distracted by the condition of the wooden fences.
That's exactly what I was going to say. You said fences and broken fences.
Yeah, well, I didn't see the accessory structures
Yeah.
behind
Yeah.
it, so.
Accessory structure can be shed.
Right.
And
Yeah, so it's a shed or a pavilion or, so the other thing is our height requirements. Right now, we say accessory structures that are 150 square feet or less are required a 10-foot height. And that's measured to the midpoint of the roof, if it's a gable roof, to the peak, if it's a shed roof. And so we're just clearing up any confusion there. We're saying a maximum 12 feet from plane to the peak of the roof. And so that'll be easier for our residents to understand when they come and apply for a permit. And it's consistent with like Tough Shed and your standard sheds. The other thing in relation to 150 square feet or greater, we're upping that from 12 feet to 16 feet. And that will allow for, currently it's measured to the midpoint of the gable. We're just measuring it from grade plane to the peak. Carports, what we've done with that is we've separated that out. It was integrated in the accessory structure section. We've given it its own little section. So what we're looking at there is 16 feet maximum height, and then we're actually reducing the rear yard setback from 20 feet to 5 feet. And this will make, a lot of homes currently it's prohibitive, that 20-foot setback. So this will allow for the construction of a lot more carports. The thing is you might say they're unsightly. Well, they're on the alley side. So we've limited the access from a rear alley access or side alley access. And on the side alley access, we've actually given it the same setback as your required side yard. So it's going to be tucked away adjacent to your structure. So personally, I don't see that there's going to be a visual impact,
Except
a
for
negative visual impact, except for there will be more.
So that was gonna be my question. So what are we saying that we're now open to having those unless you're in an HOA that prohibits them?
Right, absolutely. And so, similar to what we did with Sherwood Park, this is a little more restrictive than, us saying you can go right up to the property line. So we're still requiring a 5-foot side or rear yard setback. And so, some will be prohibited based on that setback. But I think this will open up the door for a lot more carports. So we do have it separated. So if you guys might not feel comfortable with carports, you can hold off on regulating them any differently now, and we can just move forward with the accessory structures and reanalyze carports. Or if you want to act on both together, we can do that as well.
Are you feeling the carports is pretty good, or do y'all need more time?
No,
Is that a hint?
No.
All right.
We've done a lot of research, and in your packet you saw the comparison city research, and it did have the carports associated with it. So a lot of the comparison cities did have a lot less restrictive. Flower Mounds was the same as Coppell's, so just for transparency's sake.
So on the accessory structures, are there any restrictions on what they can have in the accessory structure?
Yes.
No
Yes.
bedrooms.
Well, in terms of, can it be a compost bin? Could they make it into, could it be an enclosed compost bin?
Well, it all depends on what it's constructed of, because right now we don't allow for plastic accessory structures. Most of them are plastic, I think.
Because of the setbacks shrinking, my only concern would be if there's something in there that would either attract rodents, animals, anything that would, because now you're bringing it closer to someone else's property.
Right.
And so just kind of thinking through if that's,
No, that's
is there any kind of
feasible.
feasibility? I don't think someone would use a built-in accessory structure for a compost pile. That's the only example I can think of, but something along those lines that could be, ultimately intrusive to the.
Right.
I can
Right.
easily see that. I can think of a couple of backyards in our neighborhood that they're already heavily landscaped. Then you put a compost pile in a structure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's compost is separate from an accessory structure. But if you would allow for,
Hot
I don't
tubs.
know, like wood storage, right? That attracts rodents, nests. Our code enforcement already actively investigates those.
Okay.
So if they're called out, that's a public nuisance, and they cite the homeowners, make them rectify the situation. So what we're talking about for accessory structures are pergolas, sheds, outdoor kitchens, that sort of thing.
Okay.
I have a question on
Matt?
Go ahead, Cindy.
Okay, thanks. I think it's on the pool cabanas. You were shrinking the setback to the neighboring property. If I got that correct. What was the rationale for that?
Well, so pool cabanas and all accessory buildings, we were shrinking the setback requirement.
Okay.
So a pool cabana is considered an accessory structure. But the reason I pointed out pool cabanas was because currently we don't allow for them. And so this would open up the pool cabana as an acceptable use.
Okay, so the accessory structures in general, why was the setback shrunk with respect to the neighboring property?
So it was only shrunk in terms of the rear yard setback, and that went from 10 to 5 feet. And the reason behind it is we looked at other comparison cities, and a lot of those just had the 5-foot requirement. So we were giving more flexibility to our residents.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah.
So on the carports, so they're only allowed, so where will they be more allowable in the community generally?
Yes,
Okay, unless an HOA specifically says no carports.
correct.
So
But you
what
still,
is,
you still have to have, I would think a fairly large, long driveway. Because even that 5 foot
yeah,
is still,
or it'll be an odd shaped cover,
yeah.
covered it. But so like, what about non-functioning HOAs? What distinguishes between a active HOA and an HOA that no one enforces anything, and someone does something and then someone over here does it, then the whole thing is out the window?
Right. Well,
Do we need to add any teeth on that?
we don't have any
Okay.
permission or any rights to regulate HOAs. So city government's completely separate from HOAs. So when someone comes in and asks, okay, give me the deed restrictions for this property, we say, no, that's a private matter. You have to go dig those up and with your private HOA. So they have private restrictions, restrictive covenant. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I'm thinking about our neighborhood specifically.
Right.
Technically, there's an HOA, but it's non-active. One of the stipulations was no greater than 6-foot fences. Well, up pops an 8, a 10, here and there, over time, 15 years, and all of a sudden, it's out the window.
Right. They would still need to be compliant with city standards, though.
Okay.
So we do have city standards, and we have our code enforcement division that actively goes out and educates people and then enforces our requirements.
And there's nothing to stop a homeowner in your homeowners association from filing a suit to remove it.
Okay.
Against another homeowner.
Yeah, against another homeowner.
Yeah, so that's a
Yeah.
civil issue, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's a messy lawsuit.
I bet it is.
So,
So Matt, why on the accessory buildings is the side, so if you're over 150 square feet or more, your side, it's 15 feet,
Street side yard's 15 feet.
okay.
If you're greater than 150 square
So you're
feet.
10 feet if you're on an adjacent property. So why is that not 3 feet first?
The street side yard,
No, the 10 feet from the adjacent property.
10 feet from the adjacent property on
The
150.
side.
I think it's easier if you look at the,
Yeah, so
Pictures.
which one are you on? You're on 150 square feet or greater or less than 150?
So more, greater than 150.
Okay, greater than 150. I've got the slides out there so we can,
Okay.
And then your question was 10 feet? Rear
For side.
for side. We don't have 10 feet for side greater than 150.
Okay. So what is it for less than 150 on the side or less than 150?
Okay, are you talking street side yard or
Property side,
property side? Okay, so it's 3 feet.
3 feet.
Yep.
And what does that compare to for over 150 square feet?
Okay, 100, over 150 square feet is same as the main. So your side yard setbacks required to be the same as the main structure. Just because it can be enormous, right? And so you don't want it to be any closer than your main structure. The smaller ones are 150 square feet. They're small sheds, right? So typically those would go right up against your property line. So we're 150 or greater is. Does that make sense to you?
It does. I think if you have a, yeah, I mean, it seems like you're right on. So if you have a 150 square foot structure, you couldn't put it on the side of your house because then you would need to be, that structure needs to be 15 feet away.
Has to
Yeah,
be
if your main
from your
structure
property.
requirements was whatever regulates your main structure. So if you live in an SF12, it'd be 10% of your lot width.
Mhm.
Typically those are like 9.5 feet,
Yeah.
right? So you wouldn't be able to fit it in the side. You would have to have it at least 9.5 away. Does that make sense?
So it's typically the same as wherever your house line is, wherever your house is or your setback, that's usually where you put it. Unless you're on a side street, then it's the 15.
Okay. But you could have multiple structures
Yes.
that are 149 square feet. You could have multiple and then 3 feet
Right.
across.
Yeah,
But then there's a lot coverage
There
that
is.
kicks in too, right?
Okay.
Yeah, I believe it's no more than 40%. Let's see here. I had it on here.
Depending-
Lot area coverage depends on the zoning district.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's
Okay.
probably around 40%.
Okay. That's good.
I have a quick question on the above ground pool. I
Oh,
know
gotcha, yeah.
you stated it was 4 feet in height, but is there like a maximum capacity gallons or something? Because again, you may have people that may want that structure and may just put in something that's 4 feet in height and
Yeah, really the only changes to the pools was to change liner to shell to be a more in date sort of term, so that people knew what we were talking about. Because before they're like, well, what is the liner and where do I don't really understand. So we just said shell, and I think the height that change was just related to just making it more easily readable.
okay.
Because currently it reads, let's see here, maximum height 4 feet.
4 feet. Okay.
And so, did we say 4 feet from grade was our change? I didn't even look at that.
Yeah, above grade. Yes, that
Above
was a
grade,
change. Yeah.
Okay. So your question was,
Just specifying
gallons.
more, just making it like a minimum size. I just or
a maximum size or a minimum size?
I would say
You want
minimum size, yes. Or that's
Okay.
possible.
Like no,
Wait,
no
so what-
baby pools?
yeah.
Well, okay, sorry,
Maximum.
maximum
Yeah,
size,
maximum.
yes, sorry, yes. Yeah, for that reason.
What's
Yes.
what's the concern?
Well, I just think if somebody really wanted to get that cabana built or whatever, it's like, maybe come in and say, okay, here's my swimming pool, and it's not.
Gotcha. Okay.
Well, wouldn't that be then an accessory structure?
Yeah, exactly, well, yeah, exactly.
It's just, so
Here's my
they
pool.
could technically build an accessory structure with a 3/4 bath and just call it an accessory structure.
That's true too, okay,
Okay,
okay.
they can have the baby.
With a baby pool.
Yeah.
That's what I was just
That's a
thinking.
real expensive pool, though.
Question on sheds.
Okay.
The height of a shed, like just a typical tool shed, outdoor. You said it's, what was that? Did you say 12 feet?
Well, so we're allowing from grade to the peak is 12.
From grade of the finished floor of the structure.
From grade, the grade plane on the ground
Because what I'm thinking
to
about,
the peak of the structure. So
That's about a tough shed.
yeah.
yeah, okay. I'm just thinking about neighborhoods where there's actually a slope in the neighborhood, and so the lots, are staggered.
Uh-huh.
So 12 feet from, if they're on the end, along the property line, that makes it really tall.
Well, also their fence is tall, and, everything associated with that property would be
So does the
tall.
fence have to hide the shed?
No,
Okay.
no, but we do allow up to 9-foot high fence and up to 35 foot in height residence.
How high would the tough shed, how high did you say they typically are?
10, I'd say probably 10 feet if they're a flat roof. And then if you start getting some that are barn style, then they'd start getting up to the 12.
So they would always be over the fence line, and so that could be fairly problematic if all of a sudden there's, you're gonna see, some kind of visual clutter there. And for the most part, I'm gonna assume everyone's going to follow the rules, but they would have to be 5 feet off their fence line, which that may happen. It's possible they would do that.
Absolutely.
Or,
Yeah, it just gives them more flexibility for the use of their backyards. And so one thing I forgot to point out was in accessory structures less than 150 square feet, we're allowing them to go in the side yard of the main structure. So because they're so small, and if a structure has a great side yard, then they can go in that side yard as long as they're 10 feet from the main structure on the adjacent property and at least 3 foot from the side yard setback. So I've got a graphic to display that, and I'll walk you through it. But yeah, ultimately, what we're trying to do is allow for greater flexibility for the homeowners and then clarification of the language.
yeah, no, I totally get that. I think the only thing I was alluding to earlier is that if you're measuring from the property line, which I understand why we would do that, I think it's unlikely that most people are gonna, if they buy a tough shed, they're gonna have 5 feet dead space between their fence. They're gonna put it right up against the fence. So I guess, when you compare it to other regulations of other cities, does anyone measure to the adjacent structure versus the property line? Because it almost seems like we are allowing more flexibility, but no one's going to follow it, because no one's going to put it 5 feet off their fence. They're always going to push it back to their fence. Do you
Well, they
understand?
have to pull a permit. They pull a permit and we go in and inspect it. So we're gonna make sure it
Okay.
meets the.
And you don't want
setback
your
requirements.
shed up against the fence because your
Yeah,
fence
yeah.
tends to rot if there's not a space between the shed and the fence.
Yeah, but that can be a 6-inch space, not necessarily 5 foot.
Yeah.
Well, also maintenance of the shed, if you wanna get around and maintain it, then you need a little bit of separation to get in there and work.
But are these all considered permanent structures?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if they're putting a plastic, or even if it's wood, but it's unmovable, it wouldn't apply.
It can be on like cinder blocks, it can have
Okay.
that sort of foundation, but it doesn't need to
Generally,
be.
what you're gonna find is you're gonna have a rain barrel to the rear of the shed, between the shed and the fence, to collect rainwater. So most gardeners will have a rain barrel there, but you're still gonna have that spacing between your fence and the rain barrel and the shed that's gonna be pretty close to 5 feet.
Okay, well, so we've got one more item that we need to get through before we go out there. Do you mind if I go to the next one? Okay, so it's related to business signage, attached business signage. So right now, we've got a complicated requirement that says you have to add together your frontages and then divide it by 2, and then you can put, a certain amount on the front and a certain amount on the side. So we're decomplicating that. However you say that. Uncomplicated, simplify. Thank you, yes. I just try to speak technical. But anyway, so we're just allowing a 1-to-1 ratio for the front facade and a 1-to-1 ratio on the street side yard. And we're thinking that's gonna make the business owners happy. We're not gonna see much impact citywide, because if you maintain that 1-to-1 ratio, it's proportional, so it looks tasteful on the building. So anyway, any questions about that one? Okay, thank you.
Will we see any recent business, any applicants that came through and the signing was a variance? Will that change any of that for some of those? And what would happen? Do they need to come through us again, or is that administrative? If there's any-
It'll just be a sign permit, yeah. Yeah, and Mary's case is you don't have street side yards on your.
No.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. You want to review the cases real quick, or review of council action?
Sure. I'll let Matt tell.
Okay.
'Cause he was,
Well, the battery
This is
storage
easy.
was denied.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Well, then what was the reason there?
I'm not sure. I'm not exactly sure.
What was the vote?
I think it was unanimous. They voted, it was not approved. You know, they had a motion, a favorable motion, but then no one voted for it. So.
Okay.
That's the first time that I can recall
Mhm.
that we recommended approval and they.
Unanimous approval, and then to get.
Yeah, it was 5-1.
It was
5-1 on that.
Oh, that's right, Cindy was.
Cindy.
Yeah, don't forget me.
Sorry, Cindy.
Yeah.
But make sure you get those notes right. So what about those meeting minutes on Kroger? Did that get squared away?
Meeting.
I
minutes.
saw the fussing about there
Oh.
was an item in there that was not discussed at the P&Z.
Well, so I did call that gentleman and I explained, hey, if you read this sentence again, you can read, it says, this was P&Z's motion. After P&Z, we had conversation with the applicant, blah, blah, blah. So I had explained it, it was just a miscommunication, and so I think that was resolved. But ultimately, Kroger was approved. There was what was it, a 4-3 vote?
no, 5-2,
5-2, yeah. And so
6-1.
they did no, there were 2 against it.
There's 2.
So they added, after the Planning and Zoning Commission, Kroger came back and they noticed on the north and west sides that there was a condition that it says the lights shall remain off. And they came back and said, we want to turn those on to your minimum standards at least for safety reasons. So that was one condition that you guys never heard. The other condition related to the pharmacy hours, the drive-through pharmacy hours. They changed those from 4 p.m., open till 4 p.m., to open till 6 p.m. And so that was really unrelated to the fuel center, but it did amend the previously approved conditions. And so really council didn't debate that much. But their recommendation was to follow your recommendation plus those added conditions, and plus the applicant go back and better screen the north and west sides with landscaping, and then adjust their lighting to be more cohesive with the neighborhood. So we're going to work on that with them, and we've got direct communication with corporate now, and so hopefully we can make sure everything's in line with
And
our
they said they
ordinances.
fixed the lighting.
Yeah, they've got a little bit more adjustment to do. So that's it.
How did the pharmacy hours come up as part of that?
Well, they were
When you-
reading through the previous conditions, and they're like, uh-oh, well, our pharmacy is actually open until 6 p.m., so let's go and amend that condition and just make it
It's like a
all right.
cleanup.
When you open up a PD, you can open it up for
Mhm.
everything in it, not just what they want to talk about.
Yeah. So there was the grocery store approval, which talked about delivery times, and then the pharmacy approval that talked about lighting and pharmacy drive-through hours, and then this PD.
Oh, okay.
And then
Okay.
didn't they have the fuel delivery time?
Yeah, oh yeah, and then so they limited the fuel between, they're not allowed to fuel up the gas station between 3 and 4.
When the kids get out of school.
Yeah, so they were thinking of
sense,
adjacent to Lakeside Elementary.
Does that mean that, let's say that the truck shows up and it's right after 3 and they need to wait, they can just sit in the parking lot, let the engine run and all that, or do they have to leave?
And
We didn't get into that, but
I
yeah,
can hear fussing with trucks
yeah,
waiting and
yeah,
running.
absolutely.
Yeah, they're not gonna leave, they would just wait.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Well, so they wouldn't let them, the theory was they would not let them on site between those hours. So they would not call them up and say, hey, go out there between these hours. Because what happens is when the tanks get low, it triggers the fueling folks to go out there and do it. But then they'll put these special conditions on it. And so we'll see what Kroger comes up with. But hopefully they're more compliant going forward.
Okay.
Before we break, I have two quick things. One, I'm not gonna be here next month, so I don't know if that affects anything, but I thought I'd just let y'all know. But the other thing is so for plating purposes, do all plats come through us, the Planning and Zoning Commission? I guess this is a specific question. You know where that Fra Tennis used to be?
The fronds, yeah.
Thank you. So it looks like they have converted it into 2 or 3 lots with retaining walls and graded it.
Yeah.
So that did
was-
come through.
Yeah, that came through.
There's a
Was I not
residential
here?
replat.
Was it
Apparently not.
Apparently I was gone that one. Okay. Okay,
But-
thank you.
but
Because
yes.
I didn't remember it at all.
Well, yeah, so what they did there was they divided into 3 lots, and then the southernmost lot has the
Has the Encore easement in it?
Encore
Okay.
easement, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. I was confused.
There are some that are done administratively, but I would say 95% come through you guys.
Okay. Well, that one just seemed like, it was platting into 3 lots versus the, okay.
Tammy, thank you for the pizza
Yes.
for dinner.
Yes, thank you.
What did we do to deserve this? Thank you, that's great. We got our standard issue water.
Yes, you guys are good.
All right, the time is almost 6:42, and you want a 5-minute break before we start?
Yes, please.
You know, there's always food when there's a
Hey, Julian, is Cindy on?
She's not. Looks like she dropped off. Yeah, she's not on right now.
Okay, the time is 6:48, and the Planning and Zoning Commission is reconvening into general session. Wanted to clarify that now we have Commissioner Ed Marr. He showed up a few minutes late for work session, but he is present. And I think we still have Cindy Bishop online. Maybe not. Okay. Item number 3, citizens' appearance. Is there anybody here that would like to speak on any item not on the agenda? Seeing none, I'll just move on to item number 4. That's approval of the meeting minutes of our May 18th meeting. Is there a discussion by the commission or a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I move that the minutes of the May 18, 2023 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting be approved as written.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Vice Chair Portman. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second, Commissioner Marr. Cammie, would you call the roll, please?
Please respond by saying aye or nay as I call your name. Commissioner Blankenship.
Aye.
Commissioner Guerra.
Aye.
Vice Chair Portman.
Aye.
Chairman Haas.
Aye.
Commissioner Mauer.
Aye.
And Commissioner Bishop.
Aye.
All approved, none opposed, motion carries.
All righty. Item 5 on the agenda this evening is a public hearing. This is to consider approval of PD-295R4-HC Popeye's Chicken Restaurant, a zoning change request from Plan Development number 295 Highway Commercial to Plan Development number 295 Revision 4 Highway Commercial to approve a detailed site plan for a Popeye's Chicken sit-down/drive-through restaurant in 0.97 acres of property located on the south side of State Highway 121 between Freeport Parkway and Northwestern Drive, just southwest of the proposed Tim Hortons, at the request of Archway 121 Coppell Limited, being represented by Clay Christie of Claymore Engineering. We have a staff presentation by Ms. Mary Perone Boswell. Mary?
Good evening, Chairman, Commissioners. This first public hearing on your agenda tonight is something that you've seen earlier this year. So just to give you a brief background history, back in 2019, City Council approved a concept plan for a gas station, hotel, restaurants, office uses on 8.6 acres, and a detailed site plan for a QT convenience store with gas pumps fronting Freeport Parkway, outlined in the red. The QT gas station has since been constructed. In August of 2020, City Council approved a detailed site plan for the Sheraton Four Points Hotel, which has not been constructed, and that's identified on the blue. At the beginning of 2023, Popeyes had submitted a restaurant and later withdrew their application to re-examine their site layout when Starbucks withdrew their project. So this is what's before you again this evening. Excuse me. The original proposal showed a focal point area that contained a walkway linear park that went down the center of the site and connected the QT to the now hotel site. This area would be amenitized. One of the PD conditions will require that the details of the focal point area require staff approval and shall be in place with the development of the buildings at the eastern portion of the site. The property itself will need to be replatted to realign with the proposal and prior to any permits being granted for construction. So tonight's agenda does have 2 restaurant sites. So this is the site plan for the Popeyes. The existing driveway from State Highway 121 frontage road will serve as the main entrance to the site as the rest of the block develops. Additional driveways, access easements, and fire lanes will connect the different developments on the site. The Popeyes will have a sit-down component as well as a drive-through. There are 2 drive-through lanes proposed with approximately 6 stacking spaces each. So the building is about 2,571 square feet with 26 parking spaces. The majority of the parking will be located interior to the site with 12 parking spaces on the 121 frontage. An access road to the rear of the site will provide additional connection and circulation. The double drive-through does put a slight curve in the access road to the rear of the site. So the main difference in this proposal from the previous one is the elimination of the extra drive between the 2 sites. So in terms of landscaping, the site is less than 2 acres and requires 30% landscaping on site, which can include up to 5% enhanced paving. So as you can see, the 121 frontage has a landscape area that's about 22 feet in depth, larger on the outside of the parking stalls. Additional landscaping is provided surrounding the drive-through area along the main drive separating this site from the proposed Tim Hortons and the proposed hotel. So there's going to be about 25 overstory trees planted on site with additional shrubs and ground cover lining the landscape areas. So the landscape requirements have been met for this site. In terms of elevation, nothing's changed with regard to this from what you saw last time. Materials will be a combination of brick, EIFS, Nichiha fiber, cement, designed to look like vintage wood with a storefront frame. The bricks will be Royal Birkdale and matches the one to be used on the Tim Hortons, and the other brick matches the accent brick on the QT, so that the buildings will complement one another. Large windows make up the front and side portion of the building with a combination of EIFS, brick, and Nichiha. And there's going to be a gray metal canopy to accentuate the building, as well as a parapet centered on the building. So the side of the building with the drive-through will also have a combo of EIFS, brick, and Nichiha, with 2 windows at the drive-through covered by a canopy to provide shelter from the elements. So when we get down to signage for this site, they are requesting a variance for the allowable building signage area. Typically, the allowable building signage is calculated as 1 square foot of signage for each linear foot of front facade. Excuse me. In this case, the front facade is about 35 feet. They are requesting to use the side elevation, which is longer at 84 feet, for this calculation. This request was previously approved for Hat Creek Burger and previously approved for this site as well. So again, this would spread out to allow for their logo on the front of the building at 39.8 square feet, and another side sign along the drive-through elevation at 14.5 square feet. And then a smaller sign of just under 8 square feet along the other side entrance for a total of 62.3 square feet. They are proposing to have a monument sign, which is like 4x4 with a brick base that will match the building. Staff will require that all other signage meet city ordinance requirements. So again, this is a public hearing, zone change request. We did do mailouts within 200 feet as well as 800 feet, and we received no responses in return. So staff is recommending approval of the zone change request subject to the following conditions. 1, that there may be additional comments during the detailed engineering review. 2, a plat will be required showing the revised fire lanes and easements. 3, PD conditions are as follows. A, to allow for the attached building signage of 62.3 square feet as shown on the elevations. B, that all other signage shall comply with city regulations. C, that the brick on the trash enclosure shall match the brick on the building and have a pedestrian opening. D, that the linear park shall require staff approval. And E, that future sidewalk to be constructed by the property owner when deemed necessary by the city engineer. So that is the end of my presentation. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thanks, Mary. And the linear park on item D, 3D, that's the park that runs between all the sites, right? Between the hotel and the Quick Trip?
Correct.
Yeah. Any questions of staff by the commission? Okay. This is a public hearing. Is there anybody who would like to speak for or against the proposed application? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Any final discussion by the commission, or is there a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I would move that the commission approve PD 295R4-HC as submitted for this hearing tonight, subject to the staff conditions.
Okay, we have a motion by Vice Chair, Chair Portman. Is there a second?
I second.
We have a second by Commissioner Guerra. Cammie, would you call the roll, please?
Please respond by saying aye or nay as I call your name. Commissioner Blankenship.
Aye.
Commissioner Guerra.
Aye.
Vice Chairman Portman.
Aye.
Chairman Haas.
Aye.
Commissioner Maurer.
Aye.
And Commissioner Bishop.
Aye.
All approved, none opposed, motion carries.
Okay, item 6 on the agenda is a public hearing to consider approval of PD-295R5-HC, Tom Hortons Restaurant, a zoning change request from Plan Development Number 295 Highway Commercial to Plan Development 295 Revision Number 5 Highway Commercial, to approve a detailed site plan for a Tim Hortons sit-down/drive-through restaurant on 0.76 acres of property located on the south side of State Highway 121 between Freeport Parkway and Northwestern Drive, southwest of the Quick Trip, that being northeast of the proposed Popeyes, at the request of Archway 121, Coppell Limited, and being represented by Clay Christie of Claymore Engineering. We have a staff presentation by Ms. Prone Boswell. Mary?
Okay. So part 2. So this is the same site that we've been talking about for the Popeyes. I'm not going to give you the history again since we just talked about it. So the second restaurant site on your agenda tonight is Tim Hortons. So right there. So Tim Hortons is a coffee and bakery originating in Canada in the 1960s. It's one of the first locations in Texas. They have locations down south that recently opened in Houston and Katy. So previously this came before you as a Starbucks, now it's a proposed Tim Hortons. So again, the existing driveway from State Highway 121 would serve as the main entrance to the site. This will have a sit-down and a drive-through component. With this one versus what we saw with the Starbucks, this will have a double drive-through proposed. The building will be about 1,600 square feet with 17 parking spaces. And I gotta have my little car go up to the drive-through, sorry. So the majority of the 17 parking spaces will be located on the 121 frontage side, which does require a technical variance since the HC district requires that no more than 50% of the site be in the front yard. The remaining 6 are located alongside the building. An access road to the rear of the site will provide additional connection and circulation. So again, similar to the Popeyes, it's less than 2 acres and requires 30% landscaping on site, which can include up to 5% enhanced paving. The 121 frontage has a landscape area of about 22 feet in depth. Additional landscaping is provided surrounding the drive-through area along the main drive, separating this site from the proposed Popeyes restaurant. Approximately 23 trees will be planted on site. Additional shrubs, ground cover will line the landscape areas around the entire site, and the landscape requirements have been met. So in terms of elevations, so the building is going to be about 1,600 square feet, rectangular in shape. It will be a combination of brick, Nichiha, and ephes with a storefront frame.
The materials will match that of Popeyes. Large windows will make up the front portion, and then a black metal canopy will also accentuate the drive-through pickup portion of the building. In terms of signage, there is a wall sign proposed at the front of the building. As proposed, the wall signage will require variance to allow to the allowable building signage area. So as I mentioned earlier, again with the Popeyes, typically based on the front facade. So this is the same request, like I said, that was approved for Hat Creek Burger, that you just approved for Popeyes. So they're looking to, this facade is about 33 feet wide. So they're trying to use the side elevation, which is about 49.7 linear feet, for allowable signs of 49.8. So it's right there. No other wall signage is proposed for the building, and all other signage would need to comply with city ordinances. They are also providing a monument sign, again, same shape and size as the Popeyes, 4 feet wide by 4 feet high, with the brick framing and ground lights. The brick will match the brick on the building, and that's it for that. So in terms of notices, again, we did send out between 200 and 800 feet with no responses. So again, staff is recommending approval of this request subject to the following conditions. 1, there may be additional comments during the detail engineering review. 2, a plat will be required showing the revised fire lanes and easements. 3, the PD conditions are as follows. A, to allow for the attached building signage of 49.8 square feet as shown on the elevations. B, that all other signage shall comply with city regulations. C, plans for the focal linear park shall require staff approval. D, parking shall be allowed in the front yard as shown. E, the brick on the trash enclosure shall match the brick on the building and have a pedestrian opening. And F, future sidewalk to be constructed by the property owner when deemed necessary by the city engineer. That's the end of my presentation, and I believe, the applicant is on Zoom because they were having some difficulties getting here, so we were able to get him on Zoom.
Okay, very good. Any questions of staff by the commission? Freddie?
Mary, I do have one question. I guess in regards to the crosswalk, is there any concern with the 2 handicap spots on each side and somebody crossing those 2 lanes of traffic there?
That's a good question. I think if we needed to adjust those, we probably could, in terms of on the front, but I think we can look at that through the building permit process. I think that other driveway might be, more traffic going versus where they're showing it now. You'd have probably like stop and go people. So I think it's pretty similar to other fast food restaurants. Yeah.
That's a good point. It's just hopefully there'll be a lot of traffic there because of business, but just getting across there may be a little treacherous.
It's a good observation, Freddie. I mean, could move it toward the middle of the building or the end of the parking aisle, so they would encourage. I don't know. I'm with you on that.
We can take a look at that.
Yeah,
that's not
Yeah.
like a fatal flaw.
Okay. Any other questions of staff by the commission? Okay, we have the applicant, Mr. Christie, on Zoom. If we could get you to give your name and address for the record, and then any thoughts from the applicant on the case.
Absolutely. I apologize, guys. On my way up there, I decided to hit a piece of metal in the road, so I'm stranded in my pickup on the side of the road right now with trying to get some tires fixed. So I appreciate everybody being patient with me. Clay Christie, 1903 Central Drive, Bedford, Texas. Again, thanks for your time this evening, especially Matt. Thank you, and Mary, for figuring this out while I'm on the side of the road. Staff did a great job, as they did, on kind of presenting the project with the Tim Hortons and giving kind of the background on it. In regards to the ADA access, we're more than happy to figure out how we can move it around on that southern, well, I guess it's really western side over there. It's planned south where we have it now. Out on the front edge, I do think there'd be a little concern of moving the ADA over there just because that's such a busy road with access to Quick Trip. And then also the existing slopes on that drive. I'm not sure that those are conducive to ADA requirements on the cross slope, but something like that, we can work with Mary and Matt and engineering to make sure that we get that in the right spot for everybody. But I think that knowing what our design is, we can move those ADA spots around a couple different places if we feel like there's a better solution for that. And so other than that, if there's any particular questions, this is kind of similar to the Starbucks in the general layout of what we had originally, but we're coming to you guys presenting this. Unfortunately, Starbucks didn't move forward, and so we do have Tim Hortons that's excited to be here and excited to come to this site.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. Are you in agreement with the other conditions as presented?
Yes, sir. Yes,
Okay.
we'll work with all the other conditions. That is correct.
Any questions of the applicant by the commission? Okay, seeing none. This is a public hearing. Is there anybody who'd like to speak for or against the proposed application? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Any final discussion or a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I move that PD 295R5-8C Tim Hortons Restaurant be approved, subject to the staff conditions as presented to this hearing.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Portman. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Marr. Cammie, would you call the roll, please?
Please respond, excuse me, please respond by saying aye or nay as I call your name. Commissioner Blankenship.
Aye.
Commissioner Guerra.
Aye.
Vice Chair Portman.
Aye.
Chairman Haas.
Aye.
Commissioner Mauer.
Aye.
Commissioner Bishop.
Aye.
All approved, none opposed, motion carries.
Very good. Thank you very much. Sorry about the car problems there, and hope you're able to get home soon. All righty.
I have one spare tire, but unfortunately I lost 2 tires, so it's going to be interesting, but I think I've got some help on the way. So
Okay.
Thank you, Commission. I do really, really appreciate it. Y'all have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. You too. Item 7 on the agenda is a public hearing to consider text change amendments to the Code of Ordinances, Chapter 12, Article 35, Accessory Structure Regulations, removing the verbiage of required materials and exception thereto, allowing for pool cabanas with a 3/4 bath, that being a toilet, sink, and shower, workshops with 1/2 bath, that being a toilet and a sink, and other accessory structures with a utility sink or 3/4 bath, specifically prohibiting sleeping chambers in accessory buildings, amending minimum setbacks and maximum heights of accessory structures, amending verbiage from pool liner to pool shell, and requiring carports to be accessed off only the rear alley, and amending the minimum setbacks and maximum heights of carports. We have a staff presentation by Mr. Matt Steer. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioners, good evening. This is item number 7 on your agenda. It is a public hearing. It's the first of several ordinances that we're going to be bringing forward over the next several months. The specific ordinance being revised can be found in Chapter 12, Article 35-2. And there's several changes proposed for this ordinance. The first change will allow for pool cabanas to have a 3/4 bath, which is a toilet, a sink, and a shower. A workshop to have a 1/2 bath, which is a toilet and a sink, and all other accessory structures to have a utility sink or a 3/4 bath or a 1/2 bath. They cannot have both, and they cannot contain a cooking area. The ordinance will specify that the buildings shall not be constructed to be occupiable as residences and will not contain sleeping chambers. This will prevent accessory dwelling units from being constructed without proper zoning in place. The next set of changes apply to accessory structures less than 150 square feet in size. The following changes are proposed. The rear yard setbacks will be as follows: 3 feet minimum when adjacent to an alley. That's consistent with the current regulations. 5 feet minimum when adjacent to another property. That's currently 10 feet, but we found with comparison city research that they are less than 10. And then 10 feet minimum when backing onto a public street. Again, this is the rear yard setback, and currently the rear yard setback has to match the front yard setback for their respective district, which is typically 25 to 30 feet. So this would be lessening that requirement. Side yard setbacks are 3 foot minimum unless adjacent to a side street, which would be 10 feet. And this is a reduction from the current requirement of 15 feet, which we feel is excessive. This would also allow for an accessory structure to be located in the side yard, provided there's a distance of 10 feet between this accessory structure and the main structure on the adjacent property. Currently, if located in the side yard, the accessory structure needs to meet the minimum requirements of the main structure. The maximum height will now be 12 feet, measured from grade plane to peak, which is a change from the current 10 feet maximum height, which is currently measured from grade so to a certain point on the roof, depending on the roof type. This change will clear up any confusion for our residents. The next set of changes are proposed for accessory structures 150 square feet or greater. The changes are as follows. The maximum height is proposed to be 16 feet rather than the current 12 feet. And it's measured from grade plane to the peak as opposed to the midpoint. The rear yard will be 10 feet, and this is consistent with this will remain true even when the rear yard is adjacent to a public street, as opposed to the current requirement, which is to match the requirement of the front yard setback. The side yard will be the same as a required setback for the main structure, unless it's along a street side yard. The setback will be 15 feet in those instances, which is no change from the existing ordinance. The accessory structure is required to be 10 feet from the main structure on the adjacent property in any situation. The final proposed changes applies to carports. Carport regulations currently have special setback requirements and are grouped with all of our other accessory structure regulations. Staff's proposing to create a section just for carports to make the regulations easier to read and understand. Carports will only be allowed to be accessed of a rear or side alley. The proposed rear yard setback is 5 feet rather than the current 20-foot requirement, which effectively makes it prohibitive to have a carport in most instances. Side yard setbacks will match the requirement for the main structure unless it's a street side yard. In those instances, the side yard setback will be required to be 15 feet. Carports must be maintained, or must be a minimum of 10 feet from the main structure on an adjacent property, unless it's a duplex or an attached townhouse. And in those instances, no separation is required at the common property line. The maximum height will be 16 feet measured from the grade plane to the highest portion of the structure. Here's the instance of a side alley access. This would be required to meet the same setback as the main structure on the side yard. The 5-foot rear yard setback would also apply, similar to accessory structures. That concludes my presentation. Staff's recommending approval of the text change following a public hearing, and I'm open for any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Any questions of staff by the commission? Okay. This is a public hearing. Is there anybody who would like to speak for or against the proposed application? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Discussion? Okay. Is there a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I will move that the text changes presented by Mr. Steer to Chapter 12, Article 25, Accessory Structure Regulations be approved as he presented.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Portman. Is there a second?
I second.
We have a second by Commissioner Guerra. Cammie, would you call the roll?
Please respond by saying aye or nay as I call your name. Commissioner Blankenship.
Aye.
Commissioner Guerra.
Aye.
Vice Chair Portman.
Aye.
Chairman Haas.
Aye.
Commissioner Maurer.
Aye.
And Commissioner Bishop.
Aye.
All approved, none opposed, motion carries.
Okay, item 8 this evening, a public hearing. Consider text change amendments to the Code of Ordinances, Chapter 12, Article 29B, subsection 2, provision for business zoning districts, increasing the maximum allowable attached building sign area from 0.5 square feet to 1 square foot per aggregate linear foot of frontage for tenants with multiple facades that face 2 public streets. We have a staff presentation by Mr. Steer.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, this is item number 8 on your agenda. It is a public hearing, and it's to change one allowance within the sign section for attached signage. This is the result of a retail roundtable that we had last year where we talked about our sign provisions and parking and things. So this relates to Chapter 12, Article 1229-4. This proposed change pertains to building signage for tenants with multiple facades that face public streets. Examples are corner lots such as Chipotle or Capital One. The current ordinance requires a tenant with multiple facades to split their total allowable signage on the multiple facades fronting a public road. That results in smaller signage on each facade if they choose to have signs on multiple facades. The proposed change would treat each facade as if it's its own, allowing for larger signs on each facade that fronts a public road. There are several businesses located on corner lots that could either add to their existing signage or replace it with larger signage if this ordinance is approved. Also, the businesses that back onto a secondary road, such as the Town Center Boulevard, would be permitted to have signage on the backside without having to reduce their allowable signage area on the front. Here I've got an example that shows the lease space with a 50-foot and the street side building width at 100 feet. Currently, you add these together and divide by 2 to reach the allowable signage, which can be distributed as they see fit. But they cannot exceed the 1-to-1 ratio on any one facade. And also, there's a maximum of 300 square feet aggregate. The proposed change is more simple and allows for a 1-to-1 ratio on each facade that is abutting a public road. And the total still will not be allowed to exceed the 300 square foot maximum. And that concludes my presentation. We are recommending approval of the text change amendments as proposed. I'm happy to answer any question.
Okay, I know we talked about this in pre-session, Matt, but are there, of some of the recent applications that that came through, are there any that will have an effect on those signage requirements?
I'm not sure if any of the most recent ones that came through, those are PDs, and so those were allotted additional, but I'm not exactly sure.
Okay. Any questions of staff by the commission?
So this on the same line. So if it was approved through a PD previously, and now what they would want to change it to is allowable via the new code, they would still need to amend the PD.
No, we would let them just come in with.
Administratively?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so if it's less restrictive, then we can do that administratively. Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Perfect. Sounds good.
Okay. Any other questions of staff by the commission? It's going to be easy. Is there anyone who'd like to speak for or against the proposed application? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Any final discussion by the commission? Okay. Is there a motion by the commission?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I move that the Chapter 12, Article 29B, Roman 2 provisions for business zoning district signage be approved as explained by Mr. Steer for changes to the statute.
Okay. We have a motion by Commissioner Portman. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second by Commissioner Blankenship. Shelby, would you want to call the roll? Just to trick it up a little bit here.
Please respond by saying aye or nay as I call your name. Commissioner Blankenship.
Aye.
Commissioner Guerra.
Aye.
Vice Chairman Portman.
Aye.
Chairman Haas.
Aye.
Commissioner Mauer.
Aye.
Commissioner Bissett.
Aye.
All approved, none opposed, motion carries.
Get that ready to go. Thank you very much. All right, item number 9 on the agenda is another public hearing to consider text change amendments to the Code of Ordinances, Chapter 12, Article 31-3, subsection number 2. This deals with off-street loading spaces in all districts, amending off-street parking requirements for kindergarten, day schools, and similar child training and care establishments, allowing for 3 parking spaces in lieu of the required circular drive. We have a staff presentation by Ms. Perone Boswell. Mary?
This is the last public hearing on your agenda this evening. And here we go. So this is a very minor text change amendment. Currently, that section of the ordinance speaks to daycares and child care facilities, which requires a circular drive. So what we're proposing is to amend that to be a little bit more flexible. So not eliminate the circular drive, but make it an optional with another option to provide 3 additional parking spaces up near the front of the building. So this really has more impact for those facilities that are not standalone. So if you look on the top left, you'll see, like typically a standalone daycare will have the circular drive with the drop off. Typically, they drive up under the porte cochere and they drop the kids off. But then you have, especially if you have like a retail center where they're probably part of a larger building, this would impact them more when it's a tighter fit. So it allows them some flexibility. That way they can just provide 3 parking spaces up by the front door for parents to do that drop off. So very minor change, basically adding another option to provide more flexibility. And that's the end of my presentation.
Okay.
And staff is recommending approval of this text change amendment.
Very good. Any questions of staff by the commission?
A couple questions.
Sure.
This I would assume does not, this requirement does not include home daycares?
Correct. This is, for the retail one,
Okay.
the retail kind.
And then the second question, as it relates to parking shall be designed to accommodate 1 motor vehicle for each 10 students or children cared for by the establishment. How is that calculated, cared for? Like in a situation, I think, what's the one up the road called KinderCare, where it's like a kind of a drop and go? Is it their total occupancy that they're permitted by the state for, or like how is that? How do you calculate that number?
So really, this doesn't change anything else about the parking requirement. It just makes it have 3 parking spaces up closer to the building. How's it written? 1 per 10 kids?
1 per 10 students.
Right.
Yeah.
So they have a certain occupancy load that they have to have. So
So that's because the way it's written is children cared for by the establishment, but it's really the total occupancy at a point in time, or?
It's at a point in time,
Okay.
Yeah.
at their peak time.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
Any other questions of staff? Okay, this is a public hearing. Is there anybody who'd like to speak for or against the proposed application? Seeing many, I'll close the public hearing. Cammie or Shelby, would you like to call the roll?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, my bad. Is there any final discussion by the commission, or is there a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I move that Chapter 12, Article 31-3, paren 2, close paren, as described by Mary Pyron Boswell, be enacted.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Portman. Is there a second?
Second.
Oh, yes, we have a second by, was that Commissioner Bishop, or was that?
Yes, it was.
Okay,
Yes, it was.
all righty. So then, Shelby or Cammie, would you call the roll, please?
Absolutely. Please respond by saying aye or nay as I call your name. Commissioner Blankenship.
Aye.
Commissioner Guerra.
Aye.
Vice Chairman Portman.
Aye.
Chairman Haas.
Aye.
Commissioner Mauer.
Aye.
Commissioner Bishop.
Aye.
All approved, none opposed, motion carries.
Okay, very good. Item 10 on the agenda is the update on council action or items. We reviewed those in pre-session. Mary or Matt, is there any other final comments? Okay. With that, the time is 7:24, and I will conclude our commission meeting.